Hi everyone, welcome back to Interactive Media video series. Today we're going to discuss synthesizing your research and making sense of all this information that you've gotten, and then creating personas out of your research. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we are going to be discussing kind of understanding how to put together your research insights, meaning we're going to look at ways to organize it, and then we're going to create a kind of visual artifact based on your research, and we call those personas. I'll go into it in a little bit more detail today, but it's essentially a visual summary of all of the things that you learned based on the people you spoke to. So those are pretty much our learning objectives today, being able to make sense of a ton of research data. And we specifically focus on qualitative research in this stage because you most likely have conducted these open-ended interviews, and because the sample size is so small, meaning you probably spoke to 4 to 8 people, there's not a lot of statistically significant information you can extrapolate from it, meaning you can't quite say 4 out of 8 of these participants, therefore 50% of the participants who will ever use this product are going to think XYZ. So we'll focus more on specific insights and the words that they use to describe it and your takeaways from your research. And then we're going to create a visual summary, which we call personas. And there's 2 different kinds of personas. They're mostly just a semantic variance, but one is called a proto-persona, the other one's called a data-driven persona. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about those differences later on. So how does this connect to your long-term goals as a designer? Actually, quite a few ways. So being able to conduct user research is a great skill to have as a designer. I would say that it's actually an advantage for most digital designers to have some sort of research background or have experience conducting research or planning research or scheduling. Even if it's not your favorite thing to do, it's still a great skill to have, and it makes you very marketable as an interaction designer. Now, being able to make sense of that research is an even better skill, and it takes some time to get right because there's just so much information and you're very close to the project. So hopefully this will kick off some practice for you for your later projects. And then one of the best things about design research and user research in particular is that it helps you focus on the right thing at the right time. Being able to learn from the people that you speak to what the most urgent issues are that they faced in their previous experiences will help you prioritize all the things that you want to design and build. So those are the connections to our long-term goals based on our topic today. So for our schedule, we're going to review your research notes. So you should have already conducted research prior to kicking off this module. If not, you'll actually have to stop because a lot of this won't make sense. You'll have to stop, actually go conduct your research, and then come back and follow up with us. So if you already conducted your research, we're going to review your notes, and then we're going to start building an affinity diagram with sticky notes, or we actually have an online tool that you can use as well to help you find and locate trends. Now again, these trends, I use trends very loosely. Trends generally connote a larger sample size and something that can be statistically significant. In this case, we're looking at kind of small trends based on your smaller group of people that you spoke to. We'll begin identifying them and also trying to locate very specific quotes from your users or the people that you spoke to for your case study and also for your press release. So you may be able to actually go back and update your press release based on the things that you learned in today's session. You'll also walk away today having began crafting your proto-persona for your product as well. So again, the persona is that visual representation, the summary of all the people you spoke to. You should be able to get started on that by the end of today's session after having done the affinity mapping exercise. So let's talk a little bit about what affinity diagrams are. It seems like a really big fancy word, but it doesn't have to be. So the reason why you would want to use these affinity diagrams, meaning being able to combine like trends and information together, is that using this methodology, you'll be able to take a lot of insights and start categorizing them into different places to focus your attention when you're designing your product. being able to go through an affinity diagram exercise where you organize your data means that you can start identifying those trends. Maybe not measuring the statistically significant impact that these trends may have, but more so being able to identify just where to focus on first with your product design. You could use affinity diagrams for very large research projects. I think it's personally a lot more manageable when you do it with a small group of people, meaning you've interviewed 4 to 8 people. It would make this a little bit more manageable. If you have any more than that, you may need to use the digital tools or just a different methodology for being able to digest that information. So using affinity diagrams are great for when you have a lot of facts and ideas and it seems to be very chaotic, usually because it's a small sample size and it's hard to wrap up your interviews and really get a sense of all the things that you learned. You learned a lot, but using an affinity diagram technique will allow you to better pinpoint those trends and the different buckets of information. Affinity diagrams are also great when your issues seem really large and complex. So this is a great way to distill the content that may seem very difficult to understand. You can use this to simplify not only the words it used to describe it, but also just simplify the amount of information you're looking at any given time. An affinity diagram is also a great way to build group consensus, meaning if you need to get a lot of people on board and agreeing with particular points or trends or ideas, having everyone participate in creating this together will help create consensus and buy-in and help people agree with each other before they move forward with a product design. So a couple of supplies that you'll need for an affinity diagram exercise. If you're doing it in person, which I absolutely recommend for your first one, you will need some sticky notes that you can put up on a wall. You'll need some markers, so Sharpies or something similar to that with a kind of medium/fine tip point pen. You'll need a very large working area because your sticky notes are going to start spreading all over the place. And then you'll also need a camera too. That way you can take photos and document your work. A note on the sticky notes that you need to buy. So you'll need different colors for sure. And depending on the number of people you spoke to, we essentially assign one color to a person. That way we start seeing that like 4 out of 8 colors, meaning 4 out of 8 people mentioned this problem or had this idea. So it's very important to actually have a large amount of sticky notes, meaning like high quantity, but then also to have them in different colors as well. So you can use pastels, use brights, whatever it is you find that's cheap. So once you have your sticky notes and your Sharpies and a nice big wall and a camera to take a photo of your affinity map, what we want to do is go through your research or reflect upon your research. And for each sticky note, you want to write down things that you've learned from one person. So you don't want to cram all like 20 things or 15 things that you learned from that one person on one sticky note. Instead, you're going to have one idea per sticky note. So you might end up with 15 different ones or 20 different ones. And remember, each person has their own color. So participant 1 can have all blue stickies, participant 2 can have all green, participant 3 can have yellow, participant 4 can have pink, and so forth. But that way, when you start organizing these themes, you'll notice, you'll be able to visually identify which participant it was, so you don't have to go back and look through your research and try to pinpoint it to a particular person. But then you'll also be able to identify clusters of trends and information as well. So maybe you start seeing particular types of users have this kind of problem, but then another subset of customers and users have another set of problem, and you'll be able to see that trend over time. So maybe person 2 or participant 2 shows up in like 5 or 6 different trends, whereas participant 1 only like is concentrated in 1 or 2 trends. For the part of this exercise, at least in this stage, you only want to focus on writing on the sticky notes for now. We don't want to categorize them. We don't want to create themes. We certainly don't want to organize them. So just create your stack of sticky notes, one color per participant, and write all the things that you learned, and most importantly, like the most notable things. So not every single thing needs to be documented on a sticky note. Essentially, just what's interesting and what sticks out to you. And once you've created all of your notes, and you have multiple stacks of different colors that represent different participants, you will start organizing these notes into a map on a wall, essentially. And it may look like the image that we have here. So this person, like this researcher, is writing their sticky notes and they're starting to group things, and they have different titles on them. For now, I just want you to focus on writing the notes, and then we'll organize it here in a minute. If you don't want to use sticky notes and you want to focus on an actual like digital tool in order to do this, you can do it very manually using things like Illustrator or Sketch or Photoshop. I wouldn't recommend that because it requires a lot just to maintain it, and you can't share it with other people in your group in order to edit it. So you can use a tool like boardthing.com, and from there it's a really simple tool that you can start creating different sticky boxes, and you can type in those boxes and then start giving them colors and start organizing them on screen. And some people find that to be a little bit faster and easier. I still think that the tactile experience of writing something on a sticky note and putting it on a wall actually makes it easier for you to organize trends. But your mileage may vary, so go ahead and give one or both or either a try. Here's an example of what it looks like. So you can start putting in different ideas or things that came up during your research session. So maybe green is participant 1 and red is participant 2, and then we'll go into organizing it. So now that you've finished writing all your sticky notes, you've got a huge stack of them. Now the hard part is actually organizing the content. So you have a couple of goals with this. You'll want to try to make sense of the data, but you also want to position your kind of perspective in the idea of that you're going to create a digital product from all of these ideas. And what you want to do is position them from a problem perspective. So do you notice particular goals or frustrations or needs? Are there certain things in context or in a scenario that was really important, or that kind of repeatedly came up over time? So determine first what you want out of this session, aside from just organizing a bunch of sticky notes. Determine what you want to learn from your data, and then from there you can start organizing it. So I would recommend first examine your sticky notes and start clustering them in like trends, and see what you come up with. And as you do this exercise, these trends and these headers, like this category name, will eventually come to fruition. But with the volume of sticky notes that you have, you'll just want to focus on clustering them and putting them in similar or like in close proximity of each other so that you can actually create headers afterwards. Now, for the purposes of this class, we want to create a user persona from this data. So as I mentioned, it's a kind of visual summary of all of your research sessions. You don't create one persona for each person you interviewed. It's more about a summary of all 4 or 8, 10, 12 people that you interviewed. So you only submit one as a summary of everyone you spoke to. And the information that you want to uncover specifically for the persona are goals, motivations, and needs. So in my class example, I use a video gamer and kind of this video game perspective, but for your project, you may have something completely different, which is fine. What you then want to do is start moving sticky notes into those trends or into meaningful clusters, and then you can start writing headers. Once you are done with the sticky note exercise, make sure you take a photo so that you can actually include it in your case study, and so that you can reference it later on when you build your personas outside of the classroom. It's very difficult for you to remember all of this all in your head. If you do it digitally, then you'll have to remember it, but having the photos will be very helpful, and also be a good addition to your design portfolio. You can take this macro view like what you see here. You can take a picture like that, or you can actually go in and then take just a photo of rehearse, just a photo of goal, feedback, time, etc. So you can actually take more specific ones so that you can see it when you start designing on your own. The digital version of that would just be using boardthings.com and starting to put headers and starting to group things and move things across the screen. So it's essentially just a digital version of what you've done with the sticky notes. So once you've uncovered your information using an affinity diagram with sticky notes or doing it online, we'll create a persona. So this persona is usually a digital artifact, meaning it's a digital piece of paper. It's not paper because it's not printed, but it's a digital version of that. And it's essentially a visual representation of all the people that you spoke to. So you give them a fictitious name, you have some information about their demographics. So again, it's a summary of all the people you spoke to, so it might not be 100% accurate, and that's okay. You'll have a stock photo of who this person might look like, and you'll also have a quote that kind of addresses the problems and the goals that they had based on the research that you conducted. This persona is intended to stand in as the voice of your customer when you are looking to make really controversial decisions with your product. So if you're looking to build this version versus this version and you need rationale why, or you need data on who this person is, you can look at this like proto persona or this persona that you've designed to make those decisions. And you don't have to go back and look at all of your user research data because that would be very time consuming and difficult. So there's two kinds of personas. They're both personas, but they're at different stages of data collection. So your proto persona is essentially your aspirational theoretical customer, and they're not yet validated by data. You actually validate it over time. Now you may think this is strange. I've interviewed these people and I have data on it. So yes, that is partially true, but you don't have enough people. So you may have 4 or 8 people, but again, you might want to scale up to 25 or 50 in order to get a really good idea of who your target audience is. And you might not have time to do that in this class, and it's certainly not the requirements. It's beyond the scope of this project. But I want you to be able to explain what the difference is between proto-persona and a data-driven persona are. So a proto-persona is a prototype or a prototypical persona, meaning that it's kind of available for testing, available for validation, and that it may change over time. Now, a data-driven persona is driven by a lot of data points, either from interviews or usage data that you have through an existing app or website, being able to pull demographic information based on self-reported data, and just all the other research activities that you may conduct in order to uncover information. But generally, data-driven personas are driven by a much larger sample set of people, whereas proto-personas are a much smaller set. So I hope that clarifies some confusion between like what personas are and the different kinds of personas. And the example I have here is purely just an example. You don't have to follow it. There's a ton of different examples online that you can look at. But generally, the simpler the persona, the better, to be honest. The least amount of words to explain the most amount of detail possible is what I would suggest. So what I'm primarily looking for are goals, motivations, needs, brands that this type of customer, this type of user already has a positive affinity towards, a short bio, and a pull quote. So something that they would say as a way to address this particular problem or solution that they're looking for. And here I have a worksheet for you to kind of practice with. So here on the left, we have the name and photo and demographic details. So again, fictitious name, a stock photo, and some speculative demographic information. So what's their age, what's their occupation, what other information is important, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. So is it, if you're doing if you're creating an app for travel, something that might be relevant would be family size, income level, where they live, types of travel they like to do, etc. Whereas that type of information wouldn't be helpful for a ride-sharing app, for example. The next thing you want to focus on is behaviors and habits. So things that they talked about during your interviews. Are there certain things that they continue doing? Do they keep shopping for deals? Or do they always validate their decisions with a significant other or friends? What kind of behaviors did they exude during it? What are their particular feelings or emotions that they had? That's kind of where you would put that information. The next one would be stories or frustrations or scenarios. So was there anything that really stood out to you about the story of their problem or the story of their journey? So in the case of the vacationers or the travelers, Was there a scenario that was set up for you that really allowed you to dive deeper into the problem and it made you feel passionate about this type of project? That's what I would include here. If you don't have that, I would focus on a very specific scenario that was probably the most problematic for them, because with problems you can create solutions. So here you may be able, if it's a travel app, you can talk about having trouble, like having difficulty booking a train ticket, or getting lost while at a destination, etc. And then on the bottom right, you'll focus on needs, problems, and goals. So for a travel app, they might need to work within a budget. Maybe they have difficulties scheduling vacations with a lot of different people at the same time because they want to coordinate kind of a weekend out, for example. And maybe there's very particular goals that they're looking to have. So it could be social goals, it could be financial goals, it could be goals that are specific to the problem. But see what you uncover based on the research activities that we'll be doing. So go ahead and continue your work, and I will connect with you next time.